Hello, welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about natural attunement. So, this is how we synchronize our lifestyle with how we live in the modern world. So, we basically look at a few core influences. So, there are five elements of this, five core influences, which are consumption, respiration, movement, quality, um, mentality, the way we think, and our environment. These five factors are the only avenues through which we can exert our control over our well being. Everything else kind of lies beyond our reach. So, the way we eat, the way we breathe, the way we move, the way we think, and the way and how we integrate ourselves with our natural environment. So those are decisions we can make that affect our health directly. Everything else is kind of outside of our control. We can't really affect things directly. We can try and tinker with them. We can go see a medical professional or a dietitian or something and try and find out the perfect little thing. But it's a balancing act, and there's a lot of guesswork in there, and it requires a high level of expertise. And whether you're doing some kind of an intervention like that or just taking care of your health in general, whatever you're doing, if you're if the way you eat, breathe, move, think, and engage with your environment isn't in sync, then you're not going to be getting the most out of whatever else you're doing. So, my approach with the natural attunement approach focuses on principles rather than little granular details. So, it empowers us to make more intentional and meaningful choices in our daily life without having to overload us with things to do or really complex diets to focus on and things like that. So, since this is like really simple guidelines, this is not going to be a super long um, talk on my part. But if you have any questions along the way, please leave some questions in the chat. I'm going to answer some questions after this. I've got a few questions that some people have submitted before as well. Anything you want to know about these principles, also anything you want to know about mobility, any questions you have about our upcoming cohort or my online courses, you can ask those as well. So if anything comes to mind at any point, just drop it in the chat and I'll get to it closer to the second half of the call. So consumption, our first focal point. So it's not just about what you eat, but it's really about how you engage with eating, right? So we're not talking about what kind of diet you follow, how much calories you're getting, how much water you're drinking, all of those, or what kind of fluids you're drinking. All of those details are kind of unique to each individual, and it's going to be different depending on who you are and what your food sensitivities are. And there's so many different things. There's also like kind of what are your values. Some people's food choices are not necessarily health related, but more an ethical thing as well. So there's a lot of reasons to eat differently, right? But no matter what diet you're following, and no matter what kind of philosophy is underlying the way that you govern your diet, what everyone can focus on is chewing thoroughly and sipping our drinks mindfully. So if we're not chewing our food properly, one, there's not as much surface area for our body to digest it. Two, we're not actually mechanically digesting our food properly. So digestion is also a mechanical process. We're masticating this food, we're breaking it up into smaller particles so that the stuff that happens inside our body, the chemical digestion, isn't as um, isn't as wasteful for our energy. We can use our energy more efficiently if we're chewing our food properly. Also, different foods that are more complex and more challenging to break down, we're not stressing our body out as much. So even things that your body has a bit of an issue with is going to be much more tolerated if it's chewed properly, especially when it comes to starches and sugars. Amylase is the digestive enzyme that breaks down starches, right? And that amylase is mostly in our saliva. So if you chew thoroughly, you're producing more saliva, mixing more of it in with the food, and you're actually starting that digestion process chemically before it even passes through your throat. So chewing your food thoroughly, so important. And you're focusing more on your food when you're chewing it thoroughly as well. You're also connecting with your food and with your portion and with your level of hunger as you're eating. If you're not chewing, you're not really getting as much information through your eating process. So your body's signals are a little bit delayed when you're not mentally connected to how you're eating. So it's not just about chewing your food thoroughly, but it's also about the other natural attunement elements. So are you breathing? Is your breathing relaxed while you're eating? Are you breathing through your nose as you're eating? Or are you like gasping for life? Like what's your habit with breathing while you're eating, right? Because all of these elements of natural attunement have to be present in each of the elements of attunement in order for it to be really balanced. And we have our mental state as well. Like, are you sitting watching TV or scrolling on Instagram or watching YouTube videos while you're eating? If you are you really aware of what you're eating and how much of it you're eating? Are you really connecting with the flavors and the tastes? I mean, and I'm really impressed if you can chew your food thoroughly and remember to chew a lot while you're watching some crazy drama on your laptop. So yeah, focusing on having a relaxed mind, calming yourself while you're eating, having gratitude for your meal, actually feeling the appreciation for what you are doing is a big part of it, especially when that is becoming a part of your body, a part of your life. So so mental aspect is important as well when it comes to eating. And then your environment, I mean, are you like cooking your food? You're late for work, you're cooking your food, you're bringing it into your car and you're eating while you're driving with your knees. Like, that's not going to be a very good digestive, like, your nervous system is not in a good state to digest your food when you're doing that kind of thing. So your environment doesn't, I don't mean get your food, go outside and sit down in the grass under a tree and eat your food in nature all the time, but I'm saying your environment, wherever it is, should be relaxed, calm. You've designated it for eating. You're setting yourself into that position. You're not multitasking different things. You're not taking your food into your work environment. You're not taking your food into your, like, relax and TV environment. You're not taking your work from your phone into your eating environment. So not mixing those environments and really devoting your time to what you're doing, what you're eating. And then obviously we talked about moving is chewing, right? Are you moving correctly while you're eating? What that means is are you chewing your food thoroughly? Are you chewing properly? Are you actually engaging that first portion of digestion? And then the other part of that is drinking, right? So are you gulping your drinks or are you sipping them mindfully, right? That's a big difference because, again, one thing is mixing with the saliva, but another thing is the temperature of what we're consuming affects our body. If we're drinking or eating something that's too cold, our body has to work, our metabolism has to work harder in order to warm up, which means there's less energy available for other processes and things like that. So having room temperature stuff is best, but if you're having cold or really hot food, having it in your mouth for a little bit longer helps to regulate the temperature so that your body doesn't have to do that work internally as much. So sipping is important for those reasons. And it's also, again, sending that signal of I'm drinking, how much of this fluid do I need in order to satiate my thirst, and how much stress can I take off of my digestive system by not drinking this whole bottle of water at once and just maybe taking 5 minutes to sip through it instead. So again, these are often within our control, even when our food choices aren't. No matter where you are and what you're eating, you can you can find a way to engage these principles, even if you're like being at a guest's at a person's house, being entertained and you're a guest and you don't want to impose and things like that. People don't notice how much you're chewing your food, things like that. And when you're at a restaurant and you can't really decide what the ingredients are in your food or what kind of oil they're cooking with and all this kind of things, at least you can control how much you're chewing, how much you're focusing on your food, how relaxed you are, and how much you are in creating intention around the environment that you're eating. All right, so that wraps up consumption. Very simple. Just to recap, chew your food thoroughly and sip your drinks slowly. Focus on your food. Next, we'll talk about respiration. So, breath is life, right? Yet, so many of us don't breathe very efficiently. Um, our actual ideal for the chemical process of breathing to happen perfectly inside our body, we need to breathe at about a rate of 6 breaths per minute. That's that's natural breathing. However, normal breathing, how people breathe normally in daily life, is more like 12 breaths per minute. So our normal breathing is double what our natural breathing should be, and that shows how inefficient as a culture our breathing has begun. So the idea for this is really slowing our breaths as much as possible, and um, it's kind of a pain to time your breath, but what you can do without worrying about how much time each breath is breathe slowly. See if you can breathe. You can even do it right now. Try and take, well, just be silent for a bit and try and take a few breaths where you're listening and you can't hear your own breathing. If you can hear your breathing, you're breathing a little too fast. Now check and see how fast can you breathe before you actually start hearing it. So you'll probably notice that you can't really breathe at your normal speed when you're breathing silently. So it's a really good kind of check in no matter where you are throughout the day. You don't got to count or watch a clock or anything like that. Just focus on the hearing of your breath, and it'll calm you down just a few breaths like that, because not only are you breathing more naturally, which calms down your parasympathetic, which activates your parasympathetic nervous system and regulates your autonomic nervous system, which calms down your fight or flight, if you don't know what that means. But you're also um, you're also focusing your mind when you're thinking about that breathing. So it's also a mindfulness meditation, because it's hard to think about a million things when you're focusing really hard on trying to hear your breath. So it's kind of a twofer right there. Anyways, you're aiming for about 6 breaths per minute when we're relaxed, and if you really want to, you can test yourself and just time how long your natural breath is, or how long your normal breath is, and how it makes you feel to breathe at 6 breaths per minute. But I think just silent breathing is enough. The other thing to focus on is nasal breathing. So we profoundly impact our body and mind and our health just by breathing through our nose. And one way we do that is our paranasal sinuses produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, which means it opens up the blood vessels when it comes in contact with it, that gas. So when we're breathing in, and the air that we breathe is mixing with the gas, the nitric oxide gas from our paranasal sinuses, and then it goes into our lungs, the alveoli, the little sacs that absorb the air and put it into our blood, become more dilated, bigger, and the pathway for the air to get in is bigger. So more oxygen gets into our blood when we're breathing through our nose. So just nasal breathing alone creates more oxygen, or more blood oxygen, more oxygenation of our tissues and things like that as well. So we can really impact ourselves by breathing through the nose mostly. And you can remind yourself throughout the day. The big one is really reminding yourself to breathe through your nose, because you can definitely check in and see if you're breathing through your mouth. We can think about breathing through our nose when we're at rest, which most people are pretty good, unless they have stuffy nose or deviated septum or something like that. Most people are pretty good at nasal breathing when they're resting. But light exercise, even just walking, most people are breathing through their mouth once they start moving around. And we can still breathe through our nose while we're moving. So that's usually when we're doing some kind of light exercise or anything like that. It's an opportunity where we are actually focusing our mind on something, so we can more easily remind ourselves during those kind of activities to continue to breathe through the nose. The other really challenging one is while talking, because I'm trying to get everything out and I don't really want to pause that long in the middle of my sentence, but a nasal inhalation takes a little bit longer. So now I'm breathing through my nose and I'm taking more pauses. But if I wanted to get through this quickly, or I was in a discussion with a chronic interrupter, I might be inclined to put a little bit less space in between the things that I'm saying. In that case, it's easier to start breathing through my mouth. When we breathe through our mouth, one thing that happens is our posture of our head. When I breathe through my mouth, my head dips back, my chin rises up. This invites air to fill up in the upper part of the lungs. And in the upper part of the lungs, there are sensors for our sympathetic nervous system, which is what stimulates our fight or flight response. So that gets us into stress mode when we breathe through our mouth. When we breathe through our nose, it doesn't do the same thing. We're not opening our mouth, so our head doesn't lean back. Our chest still rises, but it's not rising like this. And it invites more of an expansion of our diaphragm. So it allows more of our diaphragm to go down. The air seems to go down a little bit more, feeling of filling up the back of the body. And this is how we breathe in through the diaphragm. So really expanding the diaphragm muscles, which are the muscles that support the lungs. And we're not filling our air with lungs and then pushing the diaphragm out of the way. The diaphragm is pulling air into the lungs. And then when the diaphragm releases air, it's basically relaxing and pressing the air back out. But it's really that process of the diaphragm expansion that stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system, because the nerves around the diaphragm tend to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system rather than the sympathetic nervous system. So we can actually get ourselves out of a fight or flight response and into more of a rest and digest response by breathing through our nose, by diaphragmatic breathing. So the main things when we're looking at breathing is slowing down our breath, so trying to make our breath more silent, and trying to breathe through our nose as much as possible. The first thing is to check in and see when you tend to breathe through your mouth, because most people aren't really aware of it until they start looking at themselves. Look at when you're resting, look at when you're exercising, look at when you're talking, and think about when you're sleeping too, because most people will spend most of the night with their mouth open, breathing through their mouth. And if you snore, that might be you as well. If you wake up and you have a dry mouth, you have a really bad morning breath, it's probably because your mouth is open all night. Having a dry, open mouth tends to invite bacteria, so we're more open to infection. Nitric oxide is antibacterial, antimicrobial as well, so it's also cleaning the air as it's entering our body, eliminating a lot of the risk of catching illnesses and things like that. So nasal breathing and slow silent breathing are the principles for respiration. So if you can focus on just that, you can have that right. You don't have to have, I mean, a breathing practice can be really, really good, and doing breathing exercises can be really, really good. But you don't need that in order to optimize that kind of general health benefit. All right, next we're looking at mentality. So this really is just focused on letting go of fixations. So we tend to fixate on unresolved problems, and that drains our not just our mental resources, but our physical energy as well, because mental processes require energy. When we determine that there's no action that can be taken for something we're thinking about, then it's maybe better to stop thinking about it. If we're thinking about something, then there should be something we can do about it right now, or something we have to sort out so that we can um, take action in some kind of way. And if there's no way to take action, then focusing on it is just going to drag us down and make us feel depressed or uncomfortable or anxious or scared. So it's better to focus on kind of things that make us feel gratitude, appreciation, or tasks that we can make immediate progress on, right? If we're always focused on tasks we that are not at a point of ripened opportunity for us to take action for it, then we're stuck, right? And then if we're just thinking about that, we're stuck in a future that hasn't come yet, right? That the time isn't now. And there are things right now that we could be focused on. So if you feel like, oh man, times are tough, I got all this stuff to do, I got to wait for this thing, I'm kind of in a stuck point, I don't feel like I can genuinely feel like that gratitude or appreciation for things. Like, it's not going to be genuine if I try to force myself to think about that. All I can think about is the stress that's on my mind. In those kind of cases, it's really the best thing you can do is, in my opinion, focus on a on a task that you can make progress towards. So that might not even be something that's important. It might just be art, a craft, or art, or something like that. Writing something, drawing something, just getting into an activity that you can actually start and finish. Right. So putting your mind towards things that can be productive rather than things that require waiting in order to make any kind of progress. Um, so the real focus here is kind of removing fixation, right? And fixation is really just our lingering thoughts. And this is like what they talk about in Stoicism, what they talk about in Zen, like all of these ideas of mindfulness, of being in the moment. When we're fixated on something, we're not in the moment. You're never fixated on the present, because the present is always changing. You can't be fixated on the present. You can be fixated on the past, and you can be fixated on the future. If you're fixated on the past, there's nothing you can do to change what has happened, right? If you're focused on the future, there's nothing you can do to change what's going to happen in the future if you're fixated. Because if you're fixated, you're at a stuck point where you can't make progress, right? So all you can do is sit and keep an eye on it until it's ripe and ready for you to make progress towards it. So if you're fixating on something, you're not in reality. You're in the past, which is a fantasy, or you're in the future, which is a fantasy. And it's easy to say that, but when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to actualize it. And I do understand that. So we really have to come up with these almost distractions, if those are really strong, attractive thoughts that we constantly get pulled towards, in order for us to be able to disconnect from those fixations. And then we have to let go of our distractions without getting drawn back into those fixations. So this is a deep subject. I'm not going to get super into it, but the key for how we can actively help our own mental health is to be aware of our fixation and to know when it's fixation, when it's something that can't be changed, and to know when we need to let go of it, right? And if we're letting go of fixation, then we're bringing ourselves into the present. So really, what it comes down to is being present, being in the present moment. And when we look at how mentality connects to all of the other elements of natural attunement, it's really about being present. When we looked at consumption, when we're in the process of eating, mentality comes into play as being present with our food, and not being distracted by other things. And then respiration comes into place because we've got to focus in order to breathe slowly and silently. We have to focus to breathe through our nose until these become habitual patterns. So mentality is very simple but very deep, and it really just comes down to being present and identifying your fixations. Okay, so next is I'll talk about our environment. So our surroundings have a big role in shaping our health. So that could be a lot of different things. So we'll talk about our connection with our natural environment first. All animals are meant to be touching the earth almost all the time. It's only recently in our existence as human beings that we've been able to spend our entire life insulated from the earth. Like we could spend a whole day indoors and never be connected with the electromagnetic field of the earth directly, physically. We could even go outside for a walk in nature with insulated shoes on and not ever touch nature and actually establish that connection. So that's something that's really important in maintaining our health, because there is an electrical charge in the earth, and it does discharge some of the electrical charge that we accumulate through stress in our life. So if we're never connecting to the earth, we're losing out on letting go of these free radicals and these electrons that are basically creating oxidative stress in our body. So connecting with the earth is really important. That's this concept of grounding, where we need to be at least during a certain time, for a minimum amount of time, we need to have some connection with the earth. And that could mean going outside like barefoot on the grass or something like that. But there's also these tools that you can get that are called grounding mats, and it's a mat and it's conductive, and it plugs into the grounding port on the plug in your wall, and then you can stand on the grounding mat and it actually gives you that same connection, because that grounding port is also connected to the earth, so you're getting a connection directly to the earth. So this is really good if it's winter and going barefoot outside is not exactly an option, or if you live in the city and it's like maybe not safe to go barefoot outside. So these are all really good options. Or if you can go barefoot outside but you want to spend a little more time being grounded, you could put a grounding mat under your desk and put your feet on it when you're working or something like that. So grounding is an important thing that we can do. The point is really just having some connection with the earth. You could go touch a plant that's connected to the earth. Yeah, there's lots of different creative ways that you could engage with it in this kind of way. Another thing is a practice called Shinrin-yoku, which is forest bathing. So this is about going into nature and spending time in nature. So there's a lot of a dizzying amount of research that has been done by Japan, Korea. I think France did a bunch. There's some other countries that government-funded research that led to government-funded forests that were created with specific trees that have specific benefits and release certain terpenes and phytoncides, which help to boost our immune system and improve our mood and our emotional state and our physical state. So without actually having this kind of connection with nature. And this is different from grounding. This is actually being in a forest, or you can get a similar effect in an urban park, just spending time walking around slowly, kind of meandering and sauntering, and just taking in these different smells from the trees, because terpenes are the volatile compounds that plants produce that create the smells that they produce. So, and these smells have chemical reactions inside our body that have create health benefits. So by going and spending time in a forest, you're benefiting from that as far as your well-being and your health goes. And there's no supplement that can make up for that. So if we're not spending a certain amount of time in nature every month, then you're operating at a suboptimal like potential of your health just with that alone, and there's nothing you can do otherwise that's going to make up for it. So again, like, this doesn't have to be going out to a forest away from the highways and roads and cities. It could just be going to a park where there are trees and walking nice and slow. So that's really important as well. I've read from some of those research that they found that the minimum amount of time spent in nature to reap that benefit, the health benefit, is 2 hours per month cumulative. So that's like half an hour a week. Going for a walk in a park is not a big deal. Spend, if you've got a car and you can get out of the city, having one afternoon where you go to a nice trail and you spend a couple hours there can make a huge difference for your health and for the way that you feel in your body. And it's not just this invisible health benefit, it's actually how you feel and your mental state and the relaxedness of your body. So those are all really important things. So those two aspects, like actionable items that you can do for connecting with your natural environment a little bit more, is one, spend a little bit of time in nature, whether it's a park, an urban park, or going out to a nature trail somewhere out of the city. And then the other thing is try and do some intentional grounding. So either go make some kind of contact with some nature that's connected to the earth, or use invest in a grounding mat and try doing that a little bit. Jason asked in the chat, do we know what the minimum time is on a daily basis? I think he's talking about for barefoot. With the summer coming, I'm barefoot in the backyard as much as possible, but until then, it's in short bursts. Well, the research I've seen for grounding shows like people spending about 20 minutes to a half an hour grounding and seeing a reduction in inflammation and pain and things like that. So I think 20 or 30 minutes cumulative should probably be good. Should be good enough to make a difference, I'd say. But if you're spending time outside, I know you doing capoeira in the backyard and things like that, I don't think you have anything to worry about. All right, so with environment, there's also other things we can think about for our environment. One is, what about our home environment, right? And that's not about connecting with it. It is a little bit with nature. There's some plants like snake plants that can really help to purify the air in the house. So having some good purifying plants is helpful. But when I'm talking about your internal environment of your home, I'm really thinking about how you're organizing things and how it feels when you're in there. Is it cluttery? Is it messy? Does everything have its place? Does it feel good to be there? Is it a sanctuary for you? It should feel like a sanctuary, right? And that alone is making a bit of a difference. And then environment can also be our social environment. Like, who are you surrounding yourself with? Like, who are your friends? Who are the people you live with, the people you work with? Are there people who are not working well with you? Is there a way that you can physically distance yourself from them? Is there a way that you can just interact with them a little bit less? Or are there some strategies that you can come up with where you can be a little bit more comfortable in your interactions with them? So I know that having difficult people in your life who you can't get rid of for whatever reason can be a very difficult challenge, because it's a lot of stress. And at that point, in those kind of situations, it's really about finding a strategy for you to be able to interface with them harmoniously, if they're not a person that you can actually distance yourself from. So those are kind of extra bits for environment, but when it comes to environment, I'm really talking about the natural environment. So grounding and forest bathing, spending a little time in nature. Those are two things that have a profound effect to our health if we're engaging them a little bit, that we're kind of missing quite a bit in a really weird way in modern society. Okay, and the last one is movement, and this is kind of my area of interest, my biggest area of interest. So movement is really about understanding principles of natural movement. So movement principles guide how we engage with our body. And this involves initiating our movement from our center of gravity, how we maintain balance, understanding the interconnectedness of everything in the body, how our body moves as one, right? And synchronizing our movement with our breathing. So when we're looking at the principles of physical movement, first we're looking at moving from the center of gravity. So no matter what movement we're doing, we're always moving from the center, and our center of gravity is where our body weight pools, right? And this is usually about, if you have your belly button and you put your 4 finger widths just index right on your belly button, 4 finger widths below your belly button, this is about the point where your center of gravity is. So if you imagine this in the core of your body, so right in between these 2 fingers here, right in here, right in the middle, this is where your weight is sitting the most. So understanding that our movement comes from our center of gravity, even little movements from our hand is also, there are little micro movements that are beginning here. Our movement starts from our center, from our core, and there are lines of tension, chains of tension that are expanding out to create movement. So this movement doesn't start from my finger. My finger is the puppet. My center of gravity is the puppeteer pulling the strings. So understanding that movement starts from the center and really actualizing that in the way that we move can help to make movement a little more smooth and congruent and natural. So another aspect of how we can look at the center of gravity and how it relates is another one of the principles, which is shifting our body weight. So shifting our body weight is really the actionable exercise for movement principles. This is something that you can do with me and a little more interactive. So we can stand and we can look at the principles of shifting with movement. So the idea here is we have 3 main planes of movement, but we're going to think about a 4th as well. And the first plane is frontal flexion. So frontal flexion is shifting forward and shifting backwards. And the principle here is that if I'm leaning my body weight forward, my hips have to shift backwards. If I'm leaning my body backwards, my hips have to shift forward. If I do this, I can feel the weight distribution in my feet stays the same, right? So I want my weight distribution to be in the center of my foot. I want it to be evenly distributed. But if I lean my weight forward without shifting my hips back, then my weight shifts to my toes and my heels come up, and I'm using my muscles to hold myself into that position. Whereas by shifting my hips back, I'm counterbalancing and I'm maintaining my center, and I'm not using muscles to keep myself from falling out of my center. Same with backwards. If I'm shifting if I'm leaning back, but I'm not shifting my hips forward, then I'm essentially falling out of my center of my falling out of my base of support, and I'll feel my toes come up and my weight shift to my heels, and I'll even reach forward just before I start to stumble back, just reflexively. So the principles for shifting weight, especially with frontal flexion and lateral flexion, is shifting the hips in the opposite direction. So do I need to bend forward? I'm going to shift my hips back. Do I need to bend back? I'm going to shift my hips forward. If I want to do a forward bend, I'm not just going to bend over my upper body like this. I'm going to shift my hips back as I bend forward. I'm going to be a lot more balanced here. Same thing in the other direction. I maybe want to support my back, but I'm going to push my hips forward as I lean back. And then I can get pretty far back and still be balanced. Next is lateral shifting. So same idea as frontal flexion. I'm flexing sideways. So you can put your hands on your hips to help. This is really just to get the feeling of where your body is going. So I don't want to just bend without shifting my weight, because then my weight goes onto this foot. I don't have any weight on this foot, and I'm loading half of my body and I'm letting the other half go. I'll also breaking this pattern of whole body movement. So ideally what we want to do is shift the hips to the side as the upper body bends in the opposite direction. And what that's going to do is it's going to load this leg that the hips are shifting towards more. And then back to the center. We can try in the other direction. So I'm pushing my hips to the side and I'm bending my upper body in the opposite direction. So this is natural shifting laterally, natural forward shifting. So these are the way that these are profound to make sense is that these movements, these principles, you do them in everything you do. You're sitting at a desk working and you got to reach for a glass of water. You're gonna be reaching and leaning, and you're either going to do it in a weird imbalanced way and use compensatory mechanisms in order to pull you back into balance, which is going to create structural imbalances in your body and abnormal tension and pain and problems. Or you can have the habit of shifting your weight correctly when you're reaching for things, when even sitting in the car, putting on your seatbelt. Those little tiny activities make a big difference if you're always doing them with incorrect movement principles, right? So and learning the correct movement principles is very simple. So when we're flexing the body, we're shifting the hips in the opposite direction of the flexion. So that's two planes of motion: frontal plane and the lateral plane, sideways. And then the next one is rotational. So when it comes to rotational, we're shifting our hips in the same direction that we're going, because when we're rotating, we're trying to rotate on a single axis. So I want there to be a straight line between one leg and the top of my head. If there isn't one line, then if you ever seen like a revolving door where the axis of the revolving door isn't straight up, isn't a straight line? No, because that wouldn't be a revolving door. And we're trying to be a revolving door. So the idea here when we're rotating is I've got my weight on both legs, and before I start my rotation, I'm shifting my weight to the leg that's in the direction I'm rotating towards. So if I'm rotating to the left, I'm going to shift all my weight to the left leg, and then I'm going to turn, because then my turn is on that one axis. The center of my center of gravity is directly over top of that one leg. Whereas if I'm not shifting my weight first and I just turn, then I have two axes here, and they're coming into one point, and then they're going straight up. So I'm creating a lot of torsion in my knees. I'm creating a lot of stress in my hips, and I'm basically using my upper body and my lower body as two halves instead of as one complete thing. So shifting the weight to one side and turning. And if we look at like even sports, for example, if you're playing golf or if you're playing baseball or anything where you're swinging something, that's even throwing the baseball. That's that movement of really, and those are all rotational movements. Throwing is rotational, where we're always shifting the weight to that leg and then turning. So if I'm throwing a ball, I'm shifting my weight to the front leg, and then I'm pivoting the back leg as I throw. So this is the same principle goes into how we move when we're doing simple non-athletic movements like turning around to pick something up or reaching for your seatbelt to put your seatbelt on. So if this is if you're not shifting shifting your weight in the direction that you're turning, then you're going to be creating stress, especially for your knees. So that's the idea. We have frontal flexion, lateral flexion, and rotation, and those are the main concepts that we're looking at when we're thinking about the principles of natural attunement, especially when it comes to shifting weight. So moving with the center of gravity and shifting weight, you can't really separate those. Understanding that there's linkage in movement, that the whole body is linked and we're moving with the whole body as one, that would be another principle. And again, once you start exploring the shifting weight principle, that also becomes very obvious. And the other is synchronizing breath with movement. And synchronizing breath with movement is really the main thing. Is it comes with when we're doing more high energy movements, right? So that could even be something simple like getting up, but we want to synchronize the most difficult part of the movement or the most challenging part of the movement with our exhalation. So if I'm getting up off the ground and obviously going from this kind of like kneeling squatting stance to standing, so basically as soon as I get past this part, it's basically going to be the hard part of the get up. So that's where I want to exhale. If I'm exhaling with that effortful part of the movement, it's a lot easier because our entire musculoskeletal system is contracting. Whereas if we're inhaling while we're doing that, a very contractive movement, our breathing muscles are trying to relax while the rest of our body is trying to contract. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. So same thing with jumping. If I'm doing a jump, when like normally I would do a long jump or something like that, but even just a hop, I'm going to take a breath in, and as I exhale, I'm going to take off. Right, simple as that. And if I was throwing a ball, I'm breathing out when I'm throwing. If I was falling and I'm going to do a roll, I'm going to exhale while I'm doing that roll. So synchronizing breathing with movement, especially when it comes to high energy movements. So that's the principles of movement in natural attunement. So what you can bring into your daily life with that is really just digesting those concepts of shifting weight specifically, and really kind of internalize that. Okay, when I'm doing shifting, when I'm doing a flexion, like a lateral flexion or frontal flexion, I make sure I'm thinking about moving from my center of gravity, which means shifting my hips when I'm leaning my body, right? And then shifting to the leg that I'm rotating towards when I'm doing a rotational movement. So if you can think about these are things you can think about no matter what you're doing. When you're sitting at a desk, when you're exercising, when you're standing waiting for a bus, when you're like even just sitting and meditating and you're kind of getting bored and restless, and you actually you actually want to do a little bit of movement, and that kind of little shift can come in there. So you can really put it in anywhere, and it's really helpful, and it retrains a lot of things in your body. There's so many things you can do with movement, but as far as bringing a principle into your daily life to actualize in a way that's realistic and not too overwhelming, that's what I would stick with. So to go a little bit deeper into there, I think there are a few things we can do with movement and lifestyle that help a lot. If you got shoulder issues, hanging is really, really good. Hanging from your hands. This is brachiation in the shoulders, which is something that's missing in daily life. So dead hang is a really, 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 really important exercise, especially if we do a lot of sitting, especially if you have shoulders rolled forward posture. It's literally the opposite movement. So just hanging as long as you can. I've got some guides online. There's some really good research by Dr. John Kirsch, who talks about hanging and healing in its potential for healing shoulder injuries and things like that. I could go in deep into the detail on this, but that would be a whole another YouTube live. Another thing we could do is transitioning to minimalist footwear. I'm planning to do an article as a guide for how to transition. I'd say minimalist footwear is great, but if you're going from wearing normal shoes to minimalist shoes, you're probably not going to have a very good experience unless you're really taking the time to train your feet to be able to not use the support that modern shoes has been, giving you in a way that's disabling your body. So transitioning to minimalist footwear is another good one consideration to make. That's going to help develop more resilient feet. And as far as foot exercises go, if you just get a 2x4 piece of wood and practice balancing on it, that's probably the one of the best things you can do for training your foot muscles. Next, there's flexibility exercises are really helpful. So there's joint mobilizations. I have a meridian stretching course. And then there's things like Sotai exercise and self-shiatsu. But it's really making sure that you're not developing too much stiffness in your body. And then injury prevention skills help to keep you safe and comfortable and confident with your movement. So those are all I think important foundational things to take into consideration, as well as the actionable kind of daily things that we can do. So that kind of wraps up the natural attunement things, unless anybody has any questions. And now I've also got a few questions to get into from some people who sent in some questions who can't make it to the live today. But first, let's just do a quick recap. Those 5 elements of attunement are the way you eat and drink, the way you breathe, the way you move, the way you think, and the way you connect with your natural environment, the way you organize your environment. So those are our 5 things, actionable things that we can actually do to affect our health, and everything else is kind of out of our control. And we can really help to improve the success rate of the other things that we're doing by making sure that we've got these things in place as well. All right. So let's see some questions. Again, we probably have a few minutes to write up any questions you might have. Could be about the attunement stuff we talked about. Any questions about any mobility stuff, any of the stretching that you might be doing or anything like that, any of the courses that I have, or any questions about the cohort. So the first question I have here is, what's the most common mistake people make when trying to live naturally? And I think it's really overcomplicating it and getting way too detailed all at once. So people often think they need to make big drastic changes or adopt really extreme practices in order to do that. But I think small little adjustments to your daily habits can be really profound and are often overlooked very easily, especially when we start doing those more complicated practices. it's easy to overlook the simple things. When we're focused on more like disruptive changes, like strict diets and fitness programs, it can go by the wayside to think about chewing your food and shifting your weight properly. Really, when trying to live naturally, I think the most common mistake is getting too complicated with it and not really just focusing on those basic principles of what am I already doing in my life, and how can I do it in a way that better supports my body's natural processes, right? Next question is this is the desk question. I sit at a desk all day. What can I do to introduce natural movement? So I was just mentioning incorporating the principles of shifting body weight naturally. So from sitting at a desk, I'm sitting, I'm kneeling, and I can do the lateral flexion exercise. I can do a little version of the frontal flexion exercise. I can do the rotation exercise. I can do it like this where I'm turning in my head and looking, but I can also keep working and be shifting my weight a little bit and be moving, still focusing, still doing all the things that I need to do, and still moving and getting those little shifts going. So if you can get into the habit of doing these little shifts, that's great. If you have the luxury, you can take a break from your seating position, and you can like stand up and do some body weight shifts. You can kind of squat down and do a little bit of those shifts. Might feel really good. So those are other little things that you can do if you have time. Take a little break, or you can like go to the bathroom and lock the door and hide in there and do your restorative exercises. But yeah, so shifting body weight I think would be the best thing for start with office stuff. And next question is, what's so important? Why is nasal breathing so important? So we talked about the paranasal sinuses earlier, but it's also nasal breathing helps to regulate the autonomic nervous system. It improves our quality of sleep, and it helps to regulate stress hormones as well. So there's a lot of stuff you can read about this if you're interested in a book. There's a few books. There's Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McEwen, and there's James Nestor's Breathe, which is a really good one. I would recommend those two if you want to learn more about how exactly breathing makes a difference in our body. And the next question, how do I attune my surroundings when I'm in the city? So like we mentioned, you can find an urban park to walk in a few times a week. And for grounding, even if you can't ground outside, you can invest in a grounding mat and just plug it into the wall, and you can put your feet on that while you're working. They have grounding sheets that you can put on your bed and have it plugged into the wall, and it's got like a silver or copper thread in like worked into the threading of it, so it's actually connecting you while you're sleeping. So those are a couple ways that you can get a little bit of that natural connection without getting out of the city. Next question, what makes the natural these ones are about the cohort now. So this person was asking what makes the cohort or my programs different from other programs that are offered. Like I guess GMB Fitness has a good one, and there are some other, Animal Flow has their on demand, and there's other mobility practices as well. But most online programs are a little more fitness focused. Our courses are focused on teaching more teaching specific skills or a specific practice. Like for example, of Ukemi, which is about the safe falling skill, learning how to fall safely. So it's about acquiring a certain skill, and about developing the like physiological prerequisites to be able to do those skills. But at the end of the course, the idea is now you can do forward break fall, back break fall, side break fall, forward roll, back roll, side roll, so you can roll or fall in any direction safely and comfortably and confidently. So a lot of programs out there, it's about like it's really about like, are you like getting your splits or doing some cool trick, or is it about getting a lot of muscle or burning fat or those kind of things? We're not really focused on like aesthetic or performance goals, but more of a skill focus when it comes to the ukemi stuff, and more of a health focus when it comes to the meridian stretching. The meridian stretching course is a simple stretching routine you can do in like 10 minutes. It's what I do every day because to me it's the most I can get out of a 10-minute stretching session with that with that program, and it helps to keep me mobile. It keeps my hips mobile, keeps my back healthy. So I like to. These are all the practices that I personally value most out of everything that I've practiced, that I feel like carry over into everything that I do. So that's kind of the motivation of these programs that I'm doing, and the cohort is really about everybody kind of working through the course material together, and me being able to support people as they're working through it. So really, it's about learning the tools to maintain and expand your range of motion in meridian stretching, and learning the skills that prevent injury from falling in the ukemi program. So the purpose is that we can do what we want in life without worrying about whether your body's going to support it or not, or without worrying about whether you're going to get some weird injury doing something that shouldn't give you an injury. Yeah. Next question is, how much is the time investment for the cohort? Well, the way I do it is you're working at your own pace with the program. So you could get the meridian stretching program or the ukemi program, or you can do both of the programs. Either way, if you have one of the courses, you can be a part of the cohort. You're working through the course at your own pace. The ukemi cohort is designed for people to do 3 sessions per week. The meridian stretching course is designed for you to just kind of go through the lessons at your own pace, and then get into a 5 to 15-minute practice per day. If you want to make the ukemi stuff a daily practice, instead of doing it 3 times per week, you can probably do 15 or 20 minutes per day to set you up at a good pace and keep up with everything in the cohort. But again, it's not about keeping up, because everybody's moving at their own pace. People can ask questions for whatever they would like. We'll be doing like live Q&A sessions every 2 weeks, so people have the opportunity to kind of be like, okay, this is where I'm at in the course that I'm doing now, and this is the thing that I'm stuck on, and then I can help guide through those kind of things. All right, so we got another question in the chat by Alchemista. Are there stretches that would help with the shoulders? I can't think of how I would hang. Well, there's some variations to hanging. So if you can't think of how you could hang because hanging is too challenging for you, or because your shoulders hurt too much, what you would start with is more of a side hang, where you're holding onto a post or the side of a wall, and you're just kind of leaning away from the wall. So that can start to create some space in the glenohumeral joint, and create gradually over time the ability to do overhead hangs. Another thing you could do is kind of hanging on a countertop. So I can use this couch, for example, and I'm just putting my hands on the couch and leaning back like this. So if you have too much pain and you can't do overhead, this way allows you to get however far you can, and then try and relax into it. But you don't want to engage it to a point where you're feeling pain. Get to a point where it's uncomfortable. If you can't think of how you can hang because you don't think you'd be able to hold yourself up for a long time, you don't actually have to hang with your feet off the ground. You can have a lower bar, and you can get them like any department store. You can get like a a hanging bar that just hooks onto your door frame. You don't got to screw it in or anything like that. You can just put it in, put it off, and then you just hang on to it. And you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be really high. I could be hanging on the bar and just bending my knees, and my feet are still on the ground, and maybe even still giving me like 30 or 40% effort. But as long as you're getting some of that body weight, drawing your pulling on your shoulders, it's good. And another thing you could do, if you don't have your problem is you don't have a bar, or if there's pain, is you can do against the wall. So I could, similar to what we did on the couch, I put my hands on the wall and then just kind of sit back like this. So these are good ways to start with hanging. But once you get into it, if you don't have a lot of pain, it's a good idea to go invest in a hanging bar that you can just stick up in a door frame. Yeah. So I hope that helps. All right. Okay, so I got a couple more questions here. Awesome. You're welcome. What's the first step? Okay, I'll be honest. These two questions I made myself, and they're a little bit self-serving. What's the first step someone should take today? One, set reminders throughout your day to focus on the things that you want to integrate into your life. So maybe you just have an alarm that goes off a couple times a day, and that reminds you to do the things that you wanted to do. So maybe I'd focus on one action per element. So maybe it's breathe silently or nasal breathing. And then for movement, it's probably going to be shifting your body weight correctly. And that might just reminding yourself to do that. It might just be doing this little dance a couple of times, a few times a day. And then chewing your food more, practicing concluding lingering thoughts. If you have a lingering thought, even if it's not like really a problem, you can just practice, how do I stop this thought pattern and shift to something else? And then spending 2 hours per month out in nature or in an urban park. So do something for breathing, something for movement, something for consumption, something for mentality, and something for nature, right? So that's 5 things, and really it's not much more than the little suggested things that I mentioned. But if you're able to breathe a little slower or breathe more through your nose, you're going to make a big difference to how your nervous system is set in its default. If you're shifting your body weight correctly, then you're creating less stress and tension in your body. If you're chewing your food more, you're creating less work for your digestive system to do, and making it a much easier process from the chemical part of digestion. And then by practicing concluding lingering thoughts, you're developing more presence and being able to call yourself back into the present and away from like thoughts of the past or the future. And then spending a little bit of time out in nature. Really, if you're getting those terpenes, the phytoncides from the trees, those volatile compounds that help boost our immune system, and if you're grounding a little bit and making sure that you're having some connection with the earth, then you're probably discharging a lot of stress. All right, so next question, last one that I engineered all by myself. Where can we learn more about the cohort? Well, the cohort starts on May 1st. The deadline for registering for the cohort is April 25th. The way to get into the cohort is get one of my online courses. The Ukemi cohort is $150, and the Meridian stretching cohort is $65 Canadian dollars. But I'm doing 20% off until May 15th with the promo code cohort, which I'll write in the chat. All capital letters, COHORT. If you use that promo code at checkout for either one of those courses, you'll get a little 20% discount. So that's pretty much it there. Now I have a couple of things I'm going to drop in the chat for you guys. First is if you wanted to sign up for one of the online courses, here's the link, naturalmobility.net/online. And for the natural attunement stuff, for a long time ago, I wrote an article about it, but I've recently updated it a little bit. So if you want to have a little text review of what we talked about, here's the link in the chat, naturalmobility.net/post/natural-attunement. All right. So that's it. All right, last message here. I'm really enjoying the meridian stretching class and just got the Ukemi fall class. I like your teaching style. Look forward to the cohort as well. Thank you very much. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you in the cohort. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're starting in a few weeks now. So this will be the last YouTube live before the cohort starts. And yeah, look forward to seeing you soon. If you have any more questions that come up after, you know where to find me, Natural Mobility at Instagram or here on YouTube. Send me a message. Let me know if you need to know anything else. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.